Hello everyone, I am Averse, the previous rank 1 player for all of Season 1. I have played 2,895 matches at the start of Split 1 of Season 2, and I thought now is a good time to make a tier list of patch 1.3 1v1 arena weapon combinations. This tier list is my own personal opinion after playing thousands of games at the highest level for the current patch. With that being said, let's begin the video. Okay, there are some things I wanted to get out of the way before I start this tier list. Let me preface this by saying every single build in the entire game is viable to get to Mythic. It does not matter what you use. Even some of the worst builds on this tier list are probably better in like lower ranks under Mythic. The primary focus of this tier list is for climbing Mythic. It's for the players that want to play against the best players in Where Wins Me and which builds are the strongest and which builds might give you more of an advantage because they are better than others, right? The other thing I want to mention, I will only be covering builds that I see often on the ladder, either through my gameplay or through watching others' gameplay on Twitch or YouTube. Last tier list I did, I covered pretty much any suggestion someone in chat had, and I think that was a little bit of a bad way to do it because it was too many builds and I couldn't really give details on every single build because it was so unique and I never played against them. I'm only covering builds that I played against often, so I'll be able to give more feedback on it, and it should be better this way. But yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way before we start. Okay, the first build we are going to talk about is on DPS Fan and DPS Umbrella. DPS Fan and DPS Umbrella is a A-tier build. In my opinion, it is high A-tier. This build was extremely strong when we only had one life, but now that we have talents to give us a second life, it's not as strong because you can't just cheese one-shot someone. But if someone knows the combo with Umbrella Fan and they have the level 6 of Blossom Barrage, I believe that's the name, where they can constantly use those Umbrella stuns in the long combo, if you have that, this build is insanely strong. Borderline S tier. The problem with this build, and what most players will come to realize when playing this build, is when you play it against higher tier players, the best of the best, this build is harder to pull off. It's kind of like a noob stomper build in a way. It's a lot better for players that don't know how to play against it and don't have experience against it, and it falls off harder versus players that are extremely good. That being said, it doesn't mean that this build is bad versus extremely good players. It's just harder to pull off. You're going to have to put in way more effort. The second build we are going to talk about is Healing Fan, Healing Umbrella. Right away, I can confirm to you that this build is honestly probably the worst build in the entire game. And any build that utilizes a healing weapon, whether it be the fan or the umbrella, automatically makes the build very bad. Healing weapons in 1v1 PvP are awful. They have 90% healing reduction, so you're only getting 10% of your actual healing. The the Ropedart, when you charge the Ropedart, actually heals way more than the actual healing weapons. The healing weapons are just really not good in 1v1 PvP. They're not meant for 1v1 PvP. So in my opinion, I would not recommend putting a healing weapon in any build for 1v1. It is better in 3v3. It actually has a role in that, and it has a role in GVG and other PvP game modes, but for 1v1, no, this build is not it. It's horrible. The third build we are going to be talking about is DPS Umbrella and Nameless Spear. This build is actually pretty bad. I was debating putting it in C tier, but I think I'm going to exclusively leave that tier for healing weapons. The main thing about this build is pretty much the only way they're dealing damage to you is Nameless Spear Q into Umbrella Q into Nameless Spear R. And if they have like more Umbrella Qs, they can do Nameless Spear Q into Umbrella Q into Soaring Spin into Umbrella Q into Nameless Spear R. They can do stuff like that. That's pretty much their only way of dealing damage, is they have to stun you with the Nameless Spear and then into the Umbrella Stun, or the Umbrella Stun and then into the Nameless Spear, or into the... They basically have to land a stun. The Umbrella Stun, like raw landing it, is borderline impossible if your opponent knows how to dodge it. The Nameless Spear raw stun, if your opponent's good at reacting to Nameless Spear, is pretty hard to land, especially if this is pretty much the only way you're going to be catching people, so they know what to expect. And for that reason, the build is, not good. It has very limited options to catch people, and the options it has are easy to predict, and the opponent knows exactly what you're going to try to do. So yeah, for that reason, it is not that good of a build. The fourth build we are going to be talking about is Heavenquaker Spear, Nameless Spear. Heavenquaker Spear, Nameless Spear holds a special place in my heart because it is the most annoying build to fight on the current patch. I would actually, if I had to do a tier list based on the most annoying builds to fight, this one would be up there. Not only is it a double spear build, you have to memorize what weapon it looks like. So when people run two of the same weapon, the weapon appearances look different. So you have to remember what appearance is the Nameless Spear and when they pull it out. So you know if they're going to Q you or Heavenquaker Q you. They have the safety of always having Nameless Spear Q available. They have the safety of always using Heavenquaker Spear with Wolf Chaser art for tenacity. It's just such a safe build. And the amount of pressure this build can output on you is honestly disgusting. It's basically, if you're ever close range to them, you're always threatened by either Heavenquaker Q or Nameless Q, which is Heavenquaker Q is a fast ability. It comes out extremely fast and it has tenacity. Your options of playing around it are limited. And Nameless Spear Q, you have to reaction dodge it. So at any given moment, you have to react to those two spears, and they're just constantly pressuring you. A really good player playing this build is extremely annoying to play against. They're just going to coin flip Yakshas into you after tenacity, and they're going to keep up the aggression on you and constantly make you guess which spear they have out. And for that reason, it is a very strong build. It's A tier. I wouldn't put it above DPS Fan, DPS Umbrella, but I'll leave it here for now. The fifth build we'll actually be covering 3 builds at once because all of these weapon combinations are so similar, I might as well talk about them all at once. And that is NamelessSword DPS Fan, Twinblade DPS Fan, and StrategicSword DPS Fan. These builds are all builds that have better alternative options in A tier and S tier. A good example of this is DPS Fan, DPS Umbrella is straight up a better alternative to these 3 builds, in my opinion. What having a DPS Fan allows you to do on your build is it allows you to cancel Talon Strike and Yaksha Rush end animation. You can just cancel at any point in the animation with the backflip wall or the teleport, which no weapon in the game has access to other than the DPS Fan. So that alone kind of changes the fundamental gameplay of your build. But having a fan as your secondary weapon, it doesn't allow you to tab swap into it to extend your combos. So when you're doing StrategicSword combos and you want to tab swap out because you have no cooldowns, you can't true combo out of that with the fan, and it's just really awkward. What having the fan does is it allows you to catch in different ways with the cancellation of Talon Strike and Yaksha, and you can constantly fish for that and get out of it without being punished. Or you can look for the fan knockup, and then when they're falling down, you can chain it with a combo. I've seen players do that. Those are very interesting and cool ways you can catch people in this build, but that's really all it has going for it. The downsides are far more prominent than the upsides of this build. And most, if not pretty much every single build in A and S will just be straight up stronger than this build, and that's why I'm going to be putting it in B. I don't see why you would ever play one of these 3 builds over DPS Fan, DPS Umbrella. It's just straight up a better alternative, better combos, higher damage, safer. And yeah, for that reason, I'll be putting those 3 at the top of B tier. The 6th build we will be talking about is NamelessSword, Nameless Spear. I call this the Frank build on stream. Most players that play this build, they run away most of the game and they'll play off the NamelessSword Q cooldown and the Nameless Spear Q cooldown, and they'll just play for catches. If I wanted to tier that playstyle, it would actually not be S tier. But the players that actually know how to play this build and can utilize the aggression of the NamelessSword and Nameless Spear and the catch potential while also being good at reactionary gameplay makes this a very oppressive build. It is worse than a few of the other builds in the game, but we haven't gotten to those yet. But I still believe this is an S tier build. It utilizes NamelessSword Q catches and Nameless Spear Q catches to always keep their opponent on their toes. It has amazing combo extensions, and you can do very, very high damage combos. Not as much as other builds, but still extremely useful for the amount of utility it provides. And this build is just honestly really safe. A really safe build. You can play like the Frank playstyle and run away all game and play off Q catches. You always have that option available. Or you can play into your opponent's face and play pure reactionary gameplay with both Nameless. Very strong build, and for that reason, it'll be an S tier. The next build I'm going to talk about is NamelessSword StrategicSword. This build is very, very strong. I used to play this build back in the start of Season 1. This was one of the first few builds I ever played to climb ladder. It's still pretty much the same build from back then. The only difference is NamelessSword got buffed a little bit, so you can Q catch differently and it's less ping reliant. And for that reason, and with players learning more about how to combo, plus our new soaring spin, the build is actually really strong. The main downside with this build is there's really no safety net, like there's no gimmick mechanic. It's just pure reaction gameplay. This build, if you want to be a demon at this build, you have to be insanely good at your reactionary gameplay, like holding strat R and pressuring people constantly with strat R and parrying out of it constantly and swapping to the NamelessSword mid combo so people don't recognize which sword you're on, and Q catching. You have the advantage of having two of the same weapon type, so you have two swords, so you can use that to make your opponents guess which sword you have out at any given time, and you can discreetly use your NamelessSword Q and catch people off guard, and you have the element of surprise sometimes with that. But this build just has no gimmick or no safety net or nothing like that screams that it's OP. It's just pure reaction gameplay with tons of options and tons of weapon combinations. The weapon combinations you can do, the combos you can do on this build are endless. You can do tons and tons of different combos. And it's just like a reaction combo build. It's extremely good, but I wouldn't put it in S tier. The eighth build we will be talking about is NamelessSword and Twinblade. I was really debating on putting this build at high A tier or low S tier, but I think I will settle on low S tier. The reason being, I tried this build out, and although I thought this build was worse than the build I usually played, this build just is so oppressive if you get the first execute off. And what I mean by that is if you were comboing your opponent, you get their Serene, and then you combo them again, execute them, and then you have Twinblade R up, the chances of you recatching them right after that are very high, and the game might just end right then and there. And for that reason, this build is just really strong. The downside of this build, which I quickly realized when I played it, is this build is just pure reaction gameplay. Kind of similar to NamelessSword StrategicSword. It's just pure reaction gameplay. But the reason I put this build higher than NamelessSword StrategicSword is it has a gimmick. It has the Twinblade R. After you combo someone on NamelessSword StrategicSword, you don't have like a button to press which guarantees you're going to have another recatch, almost a guarantee that you're going to have another recatch instantly. But on Twinblade and NamelessSword, you do. You utilize the NamelessSword to extend your combos and to catch people, and you utilize the Twinblade to extend your combos and to use rage mode to recatch. And that whole flow of the build and getting that first execute is really strong and impressive, and for that reason, it'll be S tier. The ninth build we are going to be talking about is StrategicSword and Twinblade. StrategicSword and Twinblade is a worse version of NamelessSword and Twinblade, and I'll tell you why. I tried out both of these builds, and what I quickly realized is usually you want to have one weapon enter art. And kind of the flow of the good builds in this game, you have like a main weapon that does all the damage and is the majority of your combo. And then you have a secondary weapon which complements the main weapon, either being catches or extending the combo or giving it something, like benefiting it, making it stronger. Problem with StrategicSword Twinblade that I encountered is in StrategicSword Twinblade, you either want to use Sword Horizon to boost the StrategicSword, which is the StrategicSword Interway, or you want to use Echoes of Oblivion to boost the Twinblade and use the Twinblade Interway. Problem is you can't take both. I mean, you could, but if you tick both, it's just not going to be as good as the other builds because there's so many interways you want besides taking 2 weapon interways. So for that reason, just the NamelessSword Twinblade is so much better because the NamelessSword is, you don't need the interway to make the NamelessSword good. It catches and it combo extends without the interway perfectly fine. In the Strat Sword's case, if you don't take the Strat Sword interway, you can't do charge R recatches, you can't do special skill ×2 recatches, you can't do the Q combo extension, which doesn't really matter. It's more so about the charge R combo extension catches. You can't do that. And if you choose to take the Strat Sword interway and you choose to not take the Echoes of Oblivion interway for the Twinblade, well, then your Twinblade just feels like it does no damage. So it's still an extremely good build, don't get me wrong, but it's just not as good as the NamelessSword Twinblade build, and for that reason, I'll keep it at high A tier. The 10th build we will be talking about is Strat Sword and Heavenquaker Spear, or the double 9 build, it's called in China. I would put this build at nearly the top of A tier. It is a extremely high combo damage build. This build is rivaled for some of the highest 10-second combo damage in the entire game, next to DPS Fan and DPS Umbrella. It has extremely high catch potential with strategic R catches, and you take the Sword Horizon Interway and the Heavenquaker Q instant catch. It can catch people very easily, and it does extremely high combo damage. The reason why this build is not favored by me over my current build, which is Strat Sword Nameless Spear, is the fact that Nameless Spear just gives you more endurance than this build, which allows you to play off the Strat Sword R catches better. But what this build utilizes better is it has more tenacity through the inner art for Heavenquaker Spear for giving it tenacity on Q, and then you have tenacity in the R. So most players that play this build, they will be utilizing the Heavenquaker Spear more than the Strat Sword for those tenacity catches. But you can also use the Strat Sword for gap closing and combos, and it's just overall a really strong build. The highlights of this build are definitely the combo damage and catch potential. The downsides are the limited endurance that you have to work with, and you're mostly going to be playing in your tenacity catches. The 11th build we will be talking about is Strat Sword Nameless Spear. This is the build that I personally play, and in my opinion, it's the strongest build that we currently have on our current patch. I've tried out 5 different builds on this patch, and just to get a different opinion and to see like if my build was really that strong. And I can wholeheartedly say that it probably is the strongest build on current patch. The reason being is Strat Sword is kind of like your main weapon for your damage, for your combos, your combo extensions, and Nameless Spear is just the perfect complement. Most people don't know this, but Nameless Spear, just by equipping it, increases your max endurance by up to 30% based on your affinity. And when you press Nameless Spear Q, you gain endurance back. I don't know the exact amount you gain back, but it's a pretty sizable amount. And that just complements so nicely into Strat Sword R spamming for catches and using it to just... like the way I play this build, the primary gameplay is just using most of your endurance on dodging and Strat Sword Rs to catch people. And the Nameless Spear is just that always like... you have it in your back pocket to catch people out of parry or block or tenacity spamming. It's just so good. It's so safe. And you have the Nameless Spear Q attunement for getting out the free get out of jail card, which is applicable to any build that uses the Nameless Spear. I'm just now talking about it. But yeah, it's a safe build. It's a strong build. It has extremely high catch potential. It's just overall so strong. And it doesn't really have any like unfavorable matchups or matchups where I think that my weapon combo is like kind of bad versus it. It's just overall so solid, and it's solid defensively and offensively, and for that reason I will solidify it as the strongest build in the entire game this patch, in my opinion. The 12th build we will be talking about is the ThunderCry Blade and the DPS Fan. This build came to my attention by a player known as SFNF. He kind of paved the way for this build, and he's literally the only reason why this build is on here. This build looks pretty good in his hands, but in my opinion, overall, the build is not that good. The reason he makes it work is because he's utilizing the fan interactions with the Oxtra Rush and Talon Strike, and he's found his own 10-second string combos with this build. But even after seeing his gameplay and seeing others try to utilize this build, I would not say this build is anywhere near as strong as any build in A tier, S tier. He's kind of just playing it for his own style. It's what he likes, and to be honest, Chad, he's making it work, and it's not that bad of a build, to be honest with you. And yeah, I would probably put it at low B tier. The 13th build we will be talking about is the premier tank build, the ThunderCry Blade and the Storm Spear. I'll be brutally honest, this build is just average. The majority of damage that comes from this build is through the divine counter with the Interway Exquisite Scenery. I believe it's tier 3 for the ThunderCry Blade. That makes its divine counter a 3-part divine counter with an upswing, a downswing, and then a jump downswing. The third hit is parryable. The first 2 hits are not. They are treated as a pure divine counter. And yeah, if you get hit by that, you just get nuked. Your chi bar gets nuked, your health gets nuked. It's probably the strongest single hit of damage source in the entire game, I think. If you get hit by that, you get nuked. If you don't get hit by that, you don't get nuked, and you can reaction dodge it. So you can see the better the player is, the more they reaction dodge it, the less they get hit by it. Most players will never get hit by it, maybe like once a match if they're extremely good. And that just makes the build not that good. That's their main source of damage, is that divine counter. They are not doing much damage besides that. Maybe like a suck into Frog or a suck into Yaksha. But even then, it's just not that strong. They don't really have many ways of outputting damage. They do have a lot of DR. They have DR from their Stormbreaker Spear, damage reduction, and they have shields from their ThunderCry Blade. They're just like a big meat shield. But good players will just keep like battering you in like you're a punching bag, and you'll eventually die. And especially if you're versus the Nameless Spear, the matchup becomes even harder. This build gets absolutely murdered by the Nameless Spear. And yeah, overall, it's just not that good of a build. It's like average at best. I will call it the top of B tier. It's definitely a noob stomper build. The better player you face, the worse this build gets by far. But yeah, it definitely will beat a lot of new players because they'll just get smashed by the divine counter, which nukes people if they're not dodging it. The 14th build we'll be talking about is Twinblade and Nameless Spear. Twinblade and Nameless Spear, much like StrategicSword Nameless Spear or NamelessSword Nameless Spear, is a very, very, very strong build. The problem with Twinblade Nameless Spear is it's not double Bell Strike. It is 1 bamboo cut weapon and 1 Bell Strike weapon. For that reason alone, I would say it's worse than the other 2 builds, just because the damage is split. But overall, the build is still insanely good. Much like the same reasons as the NamelessSword Nameless Spear and StrategicSword Nameless Spear. Nameless Spear is just a perfect complement. Twinblade is the main damage weapon, and it has that amazing Flame Lash, I believe is the ability. I just call it Twinblade R, where you go into red mode, fury mode, your chances of recatching people is extremely high. And you also have the Nameless Spear Q as a secondary that people always have to think about. So yeah, for that reason, much like the other 2, extremely strong build, has multiple options to catch people, has the R button as like a little gimmick, has the Nameless Spear Q button, also has the extra Serene from the Nameless Spear. Overall, just a really good build, high damage, can use Echoes of Oblivion, only needs 1 weapon and an art. Super good, much like the other 2 builds, easy S tier. Probably the bottom of S tier though. I believe all the other S tiers in this category are better builds. The 15th and last build we will be talking about is Twinblade Ropedart. If you asked me how good this build was at the beginning of the month, I would have said low A tier, because players did not know how to adjust to the nerfs of the rats being parryable. But now that players have adjusted to the rats being parryable and the new playstyle, and also acquiring Vendetta level 6, which makes the rats stronger, this build is insanely obnoxious. Not only do the rats do large amounts of damage due to Vendetta 6, but the amount of endurance this build eats from you is insane. If you choose to parry the rats, you lose endurance. If you block the rats, you lose endurance. If you dodge the rats, you lose endurance. You can see the problem here. The whole goal of this build is to eat your endurance, punish you for having no endurance, spam you with divine counters, and just constantly eat at you. It's really oppressive, really annoying, and it's really strong. There's only really one player showcasing how strong this build is right now, and his name is Cursor in game. He's really good with it, and a lot of the other route players kind of haven't adjusted to this new playstyle. They probably will now that people realize how strong it is. But yeah, easily this build is probably, I would probably put it higher than Twinblade Nameless Spear, and I would probably put it higher than Nameless or Twinblade, but I would not put it higher than these two builds. It's extremely strong. I do not think it's the best build in the game, but due to the damage of Vendetta 6 and how annoying it is to manage your endurance versus these rats, it's insane. And that's coming from someone who has the Nameless Spear, and the Nameless Spear gives you more endurance. So I can imagine for someone that doesn't have the Nameless Spear that it's even more of an issue managing your endurance against this build, and it's just really annoying. But yeah, that is the final weapon combo in this tier list. And that concludes the 1v1 weapons tier list. Again, these opinions are all my own after being the top rank 3,000 games in the new season. If you guys liked the video, please drop a like and subscribe. And I do live stream every single day on Twitch at twitch.tv/Averse and on YouTube. So check me out there, and I'll see you all in the next video.